I have what I think is a fun question. I always think they're fun questions for folks. And I have a question within a question. So what is the first question? What is your favorite book, title of a book, or favorite place to read a book? Favorite book, title of a book, or favorite place to read a book? You're welcome to use your mic and tell us, or you are also welcome to add to the chat. And as you're thinking about that, my second question is, there are some clues in this picture. This is my son reading a book, and we had been at a restaurant, an upstairs restaurant, and I knew there was a bookstore downstairs, and so he wanted to explore, and so we came down and we found him like this. But where do you think we were? Where did this take place? And so there's what's your favorite, and then also any guesses to where we were. Ah, beside the water. That's nice. Poisonwood Bible, one of my favorites. Beach. I feel like you can't be at the beach and not read. I don't know. It's just they go together. Oh, nice. And I know Stacy is thinking you always ask us what your favorite book is, but I added some other questions, so I think it's okay. Yeah, that's okay, Sherry. Okay. Now the question. Thanks everyone for sharing your book thoughts and ideas. And the reason I thought about asking this question today is because there was, I think I've shared with most people, I love a podcast, like a good podcast, because I can do work while, or do work or walk the dog or whatever, while also learning about something. And to me, that's my happy place when I can do two things at once. And so on this podcast, it was Ezra Klein's show, and he was interviewing Jennifer Palka, who had worked in the Obama White House and was talking about what she thinks government needs to do to work more efficiently and effectively, which we all care about here, right? I would highly recommend the podcast, and if I think of it, I'll add it to the chat. But she talked about her two favorite books, and one of them, the title is, and I might type it or find it for you guys too. Okay, y'all ready? And if someone could count the number of words, I just love this. Implementation, how great expectations in Washington are dashed in Oakland, or why it's amazing that federal programs work at all. This being a saga of the Economic Development Administration as told by two sympathetic observers who seek to build morals on a foundation. So that is the title. How many words was that? Did anyone get it?
It was over 20. I stopped at about 22.
But it's kind of an emotional roller coaster, right? Because we all care about implementation, obviously. And then we have this, like, whatever is created at your state, or in my case, the federal level, and then what it means at the local level, right? And then some things work and how great that is. And it's a saga of how people see, it's just so much. I love it. All right. And then back to the other original question, can anyone guess where we were, where my son was reading that book? There's really only one good clue. Yep, that's right. We were in Ireland. And how did you figure it out, Kristen?
I'm off when I use background knowledge because you had said that you all were.
Totally unfair. It's the picture of
James
James Joyce up here. That's the clue. They really like James Joyce, especially in Dublin. All right. So thanks for Stacey Williams, who's answered that question many, many times. I appreciate you. All right. So Kristen wins. And she's going to get a chance to talk with you all in just a second. So I guess that's your reward, Kristen. So we will have breakouts today when Karen Ward is speaking with us, just to give you all a heads up. I'm going to talk about some news and events, and Kristen's going to share the SPDIG National Meeting agenda with you. And then Illinois is back to share what they're doing with your ideas about their fidelity measure. So we all voted at the program area meeting. They use those data, and they're going to tell you what they're doing with it. And then Karen Ward is going to talk about, we talk about how to have fidelity, you have to have that, the implementation supports. You all are the implementation supports builders, right? It's not going to come from anywhere else. You build the infrastructure, you make it happen. And she's going to talk about what it takes to be that systems change person. And also give some examples of what things look like on the ground as you're building capacity. All right, so that is today. So again, national meeting, October 17th and 18th. Plan to arrive October 16th. There's a half day on October 18th if you can leave that afternoon. I just want to let you know that. There was a newsletter in August. I had fun writing the introduction to it, which is about Project Runway, which we talked about at the program area meeting. And now we have a Kahoot. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And this is specifically about the national meeting. And Kelsey is going to run things.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You can click the link in the chat or enter that pin if you have the app. It's timed, so I'll give you all a second to join. All right, bear with me. I haven't used Kahoots too much. This will be fun. I'll be learning something new.
All right, so who should you bring to the SPDIG national meeting? Is it just you? Because there are strict limits. Is it only project directors? Or is it your project team and your partners that you work together to reach your objectives, work with to reach your objectives? I'm seeing 8 for our project team and partners. Okay. So second question is, I need to find my own hotel. Yes or no? So the answer is no. We are working on a new room block and should be ready. We have a great hotel and we'll hopefully have the contract in place with the University of Oregon and the hotel very, very soon. It's close to the hotel. You're gonna love it. And then when will networking and social times be held? Is it the evening of October 16th, the evening of October 17th, the poster session, the working group meetings, the affinity group meetings, or all of the above? All right, we're seeing a few for the first ones and then many more for all of the above. And it's true, all of the above and more, right? We have seen in responses to previous surveys that folks value the networking the most of anything we do at these meetings. And so we're trying to set up lots of different opportunities, some just social and fun, some more work oriented like the poster sessions, but I think you're gonna have great connections. You're going to be able to make great connections and learn a lot from the work other people are doing and ask questions and really get in depth. And I didn't really get a chance to talk about the first question. I don't know, Kelsey, you probably can't go backwards, but the question was if it should just be the project director, is it, just the couple people from your team, etc. And really, as many people as you can afford to bring with your project, we recommend it because it's such good. You're offsite, you have a real chance to get in depth, to learn new innovative ideas and pull them into your project, to learn about each other. And so we think it's a great opportunity for folks to bring their partners in, especially if you have Part C partners that you're working with. If you have your family engagement partners, so let's say like your parent training and information center who you're working with, the university you're working with, the district you're working with, we really appreciate when you can bring your partners. So we wanted to let you know that. So great. Thank you so much, Kelsey. And thank you for everyone who played. Hopefully that was a fun way to get in depth in some of the specifics about the national meeting. All right. So I want to welcome Kristen Perez-Rickles, who's going to be talking about the agenda. She is representing the Planning Committee, whose members are Laura Barwigan, Becky Gerdes, Annette Young, Kelsey Leib, John Lind, and myself. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Kristen.
So I will start sharing, and you all have access to what I am sharing also. Because I am just sharing the agenda and kind of walking us through it. Can everyone see the agenda and hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So like Jennifer said, it is October 17th and 18th. Everyone will hopefully come in on October 16th. And the meeting objectives are twofold, both to build a stronger network of SPDIG projects, which is why so much networking opportunities are built in, and then also improve project impact through data. And so the pre-meeting on October 16th will be kind of an informal meetup, and the pre-registration happening at one of the hotels before. And then you can actually fully register on day one at 8 a.m. From 9 a.m. The earlier you can register, the better, especially since then that gives you an opportunity to jump into the communities of practice and the working groups. So the way that this will be done is there will be 2 rounds. So you have an opportunity to have like a natural breaking point at 8:30 to move into a second working group if you'd like. You don't have to though. You can stay in one working group the entire time. But this way, it just gives a structure for you to switch out if you would like to attend 2. These are all communities of practice and working groups that are already in existence that meet regularly. And so this is an additional opportunity for you to meet with these people in person, have some conversation structured around a few questions that will naturally lead into continued work once we all leave the in-person meeting and we reconvene those working groups monthly.
And Kristen, I'm just going to add one piece of information.
Yes.
The SPDIGs with the early childhood focus, that is a group that will be meeting but has not started yet. And the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center is going to be working with that group, as well as Sung Young An, who is an OSEP project officer, who has a significant background at Georgetown University in early childhood and also has focused on that work here in OSEP. So just a heads up. And if you're not part of these groups right now, and you're interested in being part of the groups, please join. Even if you're never planning on being part of one of these groups, you're going to be talking about strategies and challenges, learning from others, and that's going to feed into the work group's efforts, and that's fine. So you don't have to be a part of the group right now to join these conversations. But if you are interested, it might give you a flavor of the kinds of things you could get into with the group. So thanks, Kristen.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm.
And then during that second round, there will also be a new participant orientation that leads you through kind of what the meeting looks like, how to actively participate, in the SPDIG national meeting, and that happens from 8:30 to 9. After that, we will have our cold open and conference overview led by Kelsey and John with SIG Network and Jennifer. And they'll share the SPDIG data template for note taking. Our keynote will be an hour long. It's putting student outcomes in the forefront. It's from Katie Novak. It will be a live virtual session. So she won't be in person with us, but we will all see her live on the screen in real time. Following the keynote, there is our break and our first opportunity for networking. Nope, second opportunity for networking. There will also be a shorthand information booth. So if you are interested in a free license to shorthand to use that in your work, this would be the place to get more information about that. For the cross-state sustainability, I'm going really fast, I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect.
For the cross-state sustainability planning, this will be centered around 2 tools or assessments that we'll review. And then we'll go into a process of think, write, pair, share. So there will be opportunities for us to kind of write some of our thoughts on these 2 tools and how they might be utilized, what they might be missing, just kind of our general reaction to the tools and how they might be used to support sustainability planning in our projects. And then we'll pair with another person and discuss our thoughts, pair with 4 people, and then we'll go back into the rounds and share those thoughts in our larger round table group. And then following that, there will be an opportunity for single state sustainability planning, where you will work with whoever you brought with you with your state to plan for how your own project will plan for sustainability, potentially using these tools. If you come as a singleton, if you let Jennifer know in advance, or even just at the meeting, we can make sure that you're partnered with somebody else so that you still have someone to think through and process through during that time. Is there anything you wanted to add, Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I just put the 2 tools that we'll be looking at in the chat in case you're somebody who likes to scan things prior to actually sitting down. We do want to give people, we know there are some people who love a brainstorm, some people who love to process on their own. So we're setting it up so that you get to do both. You first process and then share with some other people, small group, and then a little bit larger group. But if you'd also like to look at it now, just so you know, the Kent McIntosh document is more school-based. It's PBIS focused, but just, substitute your initiative name for PBIS and it should work. And then the Sustain tool is something that you could use more at the state level. We're not saying anyone needs to use these tools, but we did want to give you a sense of the kinds of things to be looking for sustainability and get you thinking about how you plan for it in your state and how you assess how you're doing in your state. So thanks for that, Kristen.
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. There will be plenty of time for lunch on your own. Jennifer has said that there are some restaurants in really close proximity, and there are some places to eat within a few blocks. And so there will be a list I think there will be a list. There will be a list to help you make that decision, but plenty of time for you to go and continue that conversation with your teams, or even just turn time off for a little bit and enjoy a longer lunch. When we get back from lunch, we'll go into 2 rounds of fidelity conversations. Sorry. And those will be 45 minutes each. They'll be done through the liberating structure of an appreciative interview. So keeping it more storytelling and conversation based. There will be opportunities for you to hear somebody speak on these topics through that appreciative interview, and then an opportunity for you to discuss with others in the session with you. And we'll do 2 rounds of that. And these are, I think, the topics that will be covered during that time. Anything you want to say to Fidelity Conversations, Jennifer?
Yeah, so those topics exist because of you all, because the program area meeting at the OSEP conference the SPDIG meeting. We did that post-event survey, and then folks told us what they wanted to hear more of or hear about for the first time. And so these were your topics that you gave us. And now what I've been doing is reaching out to people who I know have been doing work in that area. Not that they've done all the work and they have a perfect system, but that they're really thinking about it, wrestling with it, and they're going to be sharing that with you in an interview style. We're going to have someone interviewing them, and then it's going to be discussion. So it's going to be informal, but a good way to learn from others and to share your work as well.
And then that goes into another time for states to talk and maybe debrief with one another, another opportunity for some networking and a break, while the poster session presenters set up their posters and get ready to have us all kind of walk through that poster area. So the poster sessions will last for an hour. You'll just be able to go and speak to those to people, buy their posters, look at posters. The session topics are broad. For the poster sessions, it's not specifically tied just to data or fidelity data. It's just interesting things that are happening within SPDIGs that we all might like to know about or learn more about. And then it gives another opportunity for us to kind of informally converse with one another about what is happening in their SPDIGs, what lessons they've learned on that topic, what has been effective, and what kind of the future directions are within that topic. I'm going to pause in case Jennifer has anything else.
No, I think
Okay.
that's great.
Perfect. And then we will end our day right after the poster sessions with a SIG Network social hour at a location that I find hysterical because it is called the Ugly Mug. And I like a good pun. So we'll have the social hour at the Ugly Mug from 5 to 7. If you've never gone to a SIG Network social hour, either at the program area meeting or previous SPDIG national meetings, I highly encourage it. It's super fun, very interesting to meet kind of your colleagues on a different level than necessarily those really formal networking sessions throughout the conference. This is just a nice way to meet others in other states.
Yeah. And we've rented the upstairs, so it's all just us at this one, which means we should have enough bartenders, right? Which has been an issue. But if you do come, approach me and ask me the story of the SIG Network social hour that has to do with Earl Fote here on the call. It's a good story. I'll share it then.
I'm making a note now to ask
Yes.
this.
What are you doing picking on me again?
No, it's about me, Earl.
I know. I remember. I remember.
It's a bad mom
really
story.
Building the anticipation.
Yeah.
All right. And then day 2 gives us another opportunity for meeting in an affinity group. The difference between the affinity groups and the community of practice or working groups is just that these groups don't necessarily meet as frequently. This might be less of a working group and more of a discussion group. You have similar features to these people. There is a 2021 SPDIG group that will be added to this. So you can meet with your SPDIG cohorts. The early childhood focus will be there also, and then family engagement, evaluation, and then I think you said small population states is moving.
Yep, it'll be the first morning. We're going to change that because they do meet regularly.
So those will be your opportunities for the affinity groups. It will be 50 minutes long. There will be some format to help facilitate engagement, but you can work outside of that format if your conversations naturally take you somewhere else. And then we will have our welcome and overview of the day's agenda with Larry Wexler and Jennifer Coffey. I'm always so excited to see Larry speak. I'm sad he only has 15 minutes.
Aw.
Kidding. And then 9:15 to 10:15, we'll have our keynote with Jennifer Pierce on coaching and data. And Jennifer is from the National Center for Systemic Improvement from NCSI. So she will speak on the topic of coaching and data. And then we've got a break before our data conversations. Whereas the fidelity conversations, those are the topics. These data conversations were just kind of an idea of what we were thinking we might have, but people did submit actual proposals for the data conversations. And so these may be different than what is listed here. And then I think the data conversations, I don't know that we have the liberating structure in place for those yet. Do we, Jennifer?
No, I'm still deciding. If anyone has a thought about how we should format an hour-long conversation about data, let me know. Otherwise, I'll come up with something.
Yes. So we will have a structure for those that will lend itself to the different topics that were proposed and the different information around data. Because these are data conversations, rather than having 2 rounds of 45 minutes, we have a full hour so we could get a little bit deeper. And then we will go into our closing with Kelsey, John, and Jennifer. And then there at the closing is also when we will, they will announce the SIG Network Leadership Award for this year. And then from noon to 1, there are optional meetings with your project officers. If you would like to meet with your project officer during this time, please know to set it up in advance so that they know to meet with you and that they can schedule around other projects as well. At 1 is the hard stop because we no longer have the venue at that point. So that is the agenda. Was there anything else you needed to add or wanted to add, Jennifer?
No, just thank you very much. That was great. That was all the detail. Your memory is amazing. Thank you.
All right, I probably gave too much detail.
No, it was perfect. Thank you so much. And I'm not seeing any questions for folks, so you answered them as you went along. We are excited to see everyone. All right, so getting back into it, this is one of the sustainability measures. So Illinois Fidelity Measure, just a reminder, because I shared this last time we met, your final tally of votes. Oh, this is the September webinar. I forgot about that note. Was option A to use one instrument. There were 8 votes. Option B to use multiple instruments for their fidelity, since there are different topics that are covered in their professional development. 10 votes. And option C, choose your own adventure, 10 votes. And people had different ideas for that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Laura Barwigan and Stephanie Woodley from the Illinois SPDIG. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I'm one of them who's having allergy issues, so I apologize for that today. But before we get started, I do want to give a quick shout out to Sherry Bohanick, who is our new project director from Illinois State Board of Ed. So today is her first meeting. She just started with our project last Friday, and she will be in Washington, D.C. with us as well. So I just needed to give her a quick shout out as we get started with this as well.
Welcome, Sherry. Good to see you on.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my camera is not working, and so I apologize for that.
It's just startup challenges, right?
Right.
Everything will come together.
It's just those ISB computers. We know how they work. It's all
And
good.
Laura, just so you know, the view that we have is not the slideshow view. It's more the like where it has like the notes and everything together. So I don't know if that's how you wanted it to show, but
probably not. But
it works. I can see everything.
I don't know why it looks like that. So
it's all good. We're very excited to be back again today. We're sorry we couldn't join you in September. Had a lot of things, or it is September in August. So we are glad to be back in September and look forward to seeing you all in Washington as well next month. There we go. We can see it. We got it, Laura.
Lovely.
But I'm Stephanie Woodley, and I'm the grant coordinator for the Illinois Elevating Special Educators Network out of the Illinois SPDIG. I didn't know if you want to introduce yourself, Laura.
No, I'll get there later.
Okay. All righty. We didn't have slides last time when we spoke to you at our meeting at the OSEP conference. So we wanted to put up the slide that kind of shows the state of Illinois to give you a better representation of how our state is split up. So we are a statewide system. So we don't only have a few schools that we go into, we have quite a few schools that we go into different districts. So what you see on the left is how we have our state kind of split into 5 areas. And our state has regional offices of education. So that's what the red numbers are that you see. The yellow numbers are kind of our bigger service areas. So even though we're broken into 5 service areas, they are very large areas that they cover in the state of Illinois. So if you're from the Midwest and we go not in miles, but in hours, it's about 6.5 hours from the top to the bottom of the state of Illinois and 4 hours across, if that's how you think about it in terms of time. And then Laura so kindly put in yellow, just so you can have an idea of how far we've reached so far throughout the state of Illinois and kind of where some of our participants have come from. So we are in year 3 of implementation, year 4 of this grant, and we have reached quite a bit of the state of Illinois. So we've had over 3,000 participants in the last year who have attended our trainings, and we've done a really good job with what we call kind of our universal supports, so that many people can attend in the different areas. We've hosted different kind of special education conferences in various areas across the state. We're trying to have kind of one in each section so that it is more accessible to people. We host monthly webinars across the state and then have on-demand sessions, and we're trying to improve that this year as well. But one of the big areas that we know we needed to focus on more is coaching. So we'll talk, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So we have been coaching, and we go through Jim Knight's impact cycle, but what we don't have as part of coaching is a fidelity instrument. So that's what you helped us with over the summer, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Our objectives for our grant are numerous, and we're very broad in our scope. Our biggest areas and data, even when we're working with individual districts, come down to how are they doing in teacher retention? Because as is across the nation, we have a teacher shortage. And so we're trying to not only retain the special education teachers that we have, but recruit new special education teachers. And we have a lot of long-term subs or teachers on provisional licenses that we're working with, trying to get them to go into special education. We are also working with districts and regions across the state to help them provide these sustainable systems so that they can carry on and provide this targeted professional development to not only special educators, but educators who are serving students with disabilities, because ultimately that is our goal, is to improve that outcome. And that is something that we wanted to directly show in our fidelity instrument, how we're directly impacting that outcome as well. And of course, in order to make this work, we want to connect those families and help them to engage better with their children's education throughout that whole process. So those are our objectives and kind of what we're working with. So something that we talked to you over the summer about is a difficulty that we had with creating a fidelity instrument has to do with the scope of our work. So when we are working with individual districts, we're working off of their state performance plan, special education indicators as a data source. We are working off of, that's our number 1 priority. And that's what the state has asked us to make our number 1 priority. But we're also looking at ESSA summative designations specific to students with IEPs, and also looking at retention data, the schools systems themselves and how they are working. And then we create, and we are really good, and we're streamlining things that we do, but we've created these trainings that can help in that. And then an area in which we want to build to have even a bigger impact is, of course, coaching. But what we don't have is a single evidence-based practice that we are coaching on in our work. So that has been our biggest issues to how to measure fidelity when we are doing so many different trainings and very much tailoring it to what not only the district needs, but when we're coaching individual teachers, what they have said that their individual goals for themselves are, as well as that it leads back into the goals of the district. So I will turn it over to Laura.
And hi, my name is Laura Barbigan, and I serve as the evaluator for the state of Illinois SPDIG. And so as Stephanie had kind of gave an overview of what we're about in Illinois, our overview so far of the assessment tools that we currently use includes, first of all, just we do use the state capacity assessment and the regional capacity assessment to determine the capacity of the state and those individual regions for implementing these educational innovations. And as Stephanie had stated, we're broken up into 5 different regions, and each region has a minimum of 1 program advisor and 1 regional specialist. And so we have a larger cadre of people moving forward on implementing these innovations. We also use the HQPD checklist as our fidelity measure for implementation of the professional development, and that's used for every PD that occurs across the state of Illinois. We also use surveys for just about everything, just as you mostly likely do, and it measures the participant perceptions of the knowledge growth, skills gains, and then also their perceptions of the effect upon student success, parent engagement, and their own retention. So just surveys at every point just to determine their perception of the IESE network. Last year, what we did is in an effort to reach this fidelity measure, we developed an instrument that we call the Illinois Instrument for Implementation Fidelity, or the Illinois IFI. And what this is it's a self-reporting implementation tool that gathers data on the extent to which a PD is being implemented. So this is sent out 3 weeks after somebody attends a professional development session. All of our professional development sessions end with 3 to 4 key areas of implementation to be taken from that PD that we would expect to see occurring in a classroom if the PD were implemented with fidelity. So it's a self-reporting measure, though. And so it doesn't reach the bar that is required for a coaching fidelity instrument. But this was something that we used, and actually we liked it so much that we're going to continue to use it in line with our professional development that we offer. And last but not least, what we currently have in place is we have an excellent relationship with our State Board of Education. And so early on, probably in the next month or 2, we will be requesting data from our Data Strategies and Analytics Department of the ISBE. And they give us data on student success as measured by a whole host of things: academic success, discipline measures, educational environment, and attendance. And so they'll give us that information, as well as information on teacher retention and teacher licensure. And the data that they give us enables us to run analyses to answer questions such as, is there a significant difference in teacher retention at the state, district, and school level that is found to be dependent upon whether or not one participated in the IESE network activities? And the same is true of any of the student success data. Are the districts with whom we work, or the schools with whom we work, do they have increased levels of student success as measured by all those other indicators: educational environment, academic achievement, et cetera? So these are measures and assessment tools that we're currently using. However, as we've said, and we said in the summer, coaching fidelity instrument, that has been a huge bugaboo for us for a while. So we presented it this summer, and as Jennifer had said, we did get, and I'm so glad our numbers aligned, Jennifer. I was so afraid when you put that up there that you'd have different numbers. I'm like, well, crud, where did she get those? So So these were the responses that we have. You know, some people were just saying, you know what, you're doing so many different kinds of things, and because it's so individualized to each district or school, dependent upon the data that Stephanie just shared with us, you know what, just make one really broad instrument that doesn't get down into the nitty-gritty of what you're coaching on. Just make it really broad. And we rejected that because we didn't want to make it so broad that we weren't actually measuring anything. And so we rejected that in some sense. Also developed several instruments to align with each of the evidence-based practices that you're using. And a concern we had about that is we already use different surveys for different things. The HQPD checklist, we use post-PD surveys, we use mentoring surveys and remote PD surveys. We have all, and we're afraid of confusing our program advisors and regional specialists to, okay, now I'm doing this. Which survey should I use now? And it can be pretty confusing already. And so develop a combined instrument. And somebody had said, have an instrument with several components, one that measures some of the common questions, so to pull from the broad instrument, and some of the specific EBP questions. So we really liked that because it helped us navigate through some of the concerns we had with the other two choices. And so we developed what we call the Illinois Coaching Observation Instrument, the COI. And the way that we developed is Stephanie and I drafted it together. We just kind of went back and forth, drafting something together. And we thought we had a pretty decent draft, but what we decided to do is pull in 3 of the folks on our team who do a significant amount of coaching. And we wanted their input. You know, really what we wanted was their stamp of approval that we'd done a great job. And so they joined us and took a look at the draft we had started, and you could probably guess what happened. We totally revised it because they were coming up with things that they were coaching for that we had no idea, but we didn't realize how important it was. They do a lot of coaching on data analysis, reading the data and applying it into their instruction and student success. So we just didn't know things like that they were shared, and they just came up with some really good ideas. So we significantly revised it based upon what they said, and we just presented it to our team last Friday. So this is just as new to our Illinois team as it is to you. We chose to develop a combined instrument. That's what we already said. We chose to align the coaching observation instrument to high leverage practices. And so that was a suggestion that was made from the people who said do different assessments or a different survey. Somebody did recommend high leverage practices, and that was something that Stephanie actually had presented to our team at our retreat in May. She handed out a book on high leverage practices and either handed out or referenced a second book as well. So she had already primed us, our whole team, over the summer to start reading about high leverage practices, or not start reading, but to increase our knowledge on that. So that was a choice that we made. We included an option on our survey that would allow them to choose the content of the coaching, and then we matched it with the high leverage practices that would be observable and expected for that coaching content. So in that way, we got down into what exactly they were coaching on and what they were observing for. The coaches are going to be observing for this HLP implementation every time they go, well, not every time. They're going to be using this instrument a minimum at the very first observation that they do and for the final observation that they do. So that we hopefully maybe a midterm as well. So what we want to be able to do is possibly measure for growth over time as the person coaches and then observes how it is implemented in the classroom, that we're going to be able to document that and report it out. The COI includes both qualitative and quantitative elements, and that it'll also be piloted from September 23rd through February 2024. And so I'm not sure if I click on this, if this will share. Probably not. So let me stop sharing that and move to the instrument itself. So this is what we have developed, and you're seeing it in creation mode, not in the mode that they will be actually using the instrument. And that makes a difference, and because of some of the logic modeling that we did. I use Qualtrics, and so the coaches are told that they shouldn't be filling this out during the classroom observation. Stephanie has taken this tool and she has created a Word document that individual coaches can use and bring hard copy into a classroom so that it isn't sitting there on a computer doing this. And so here's just the introductory statement about what this is, when it should be used, how it's used, etc. You could choose the name of the person who conducted the observation. These are all of our program advisors and or regional specialists who will be doing the coaching. And then we do have other, and then they can choose, since you indicated other, please write the name of the person conducting the observation. Some of our teams are actually now working with school districts and training up coaches or coaching leaders in those districts. So we would want this observation instrument used by the school district coaches. So they would choose other for that. We also had an identification code for the person being coached so that they can keep track of who this is, so that we can do a pre and post kind of look at that. So, and I don't, as an evaluator, I generally don't ever want to know a name of a person. That's just not information I want to be responsible for. So then it helps to just have, oh, this is LB3. So in LB3, this was LB3's beginning of the coaching cycle. And then maybe the next time they do it, it'll be their final observation in the coaching cycle. And they can choose that. This is also just information that gives us a school type. So private or public, the county that they're in, districts, the ROE, and this is the area number throughout the state. So here's the question that just says, what is the instructional and or behavioral strategy being coached and observed? So this is the area where they can choose. I'm coaching on social, emotional, behavioral learning. And then we aligned it with high leverage practice 4, 7, and 8. Coaching strategies, co-teaching strategies, literacy strategies, math strategies, data interpretation and use, and inclusive practices. These are the ones that the coaches that we brought in to help us design the instrument told us that they were regularly coaching on. They could also choose other. And I use these quite a bit. The display question, it just says display this question if other is selected. So if you don't select other up here, this isn't going to appear. So if you indicated other, write the strategy that you're using to coach and then contact the grant coordinator, which is Stephanie, and the project evaluator, which is me, so that appropriate HLP is going to be identified for you to use. So that if they're doing something different, that's fine, just let us know.
I do want to say just really fast is we know that potentially other HLPs can be in there, and Laura will talk about that in a second. But when we were working with our team, we really wanted to come up with each of those areas, 3 that they had to choose. They're forced to choose those so that we can look at if they are working with literacy, that we can look at those HLPs for everybody working on literacy. Same thing with math, same thing with SEL, that they would be overlapping with other coaches that are also working in those areas. So in this other section, they can choose more, but something that we also talked with our team about originally when Laura and I presented the original document to them, which it doesn't look completely different than this, but our idea was they're going to have to stick with these 5 and then they could choose other ones. But then they said, yes, I can always observe a teacher working on classroom management, but I may not be coaching a teacher on classroom management. The teacher may have no issues with classroom management. So we really wanted to break it down to what they're actually coaching on to show that progress, not necessarily anything that they could observe. So that's kind of where that came out. We also just wanted overlap in instructional strategies. So you'll see overlap within there. We also were trying to put like an evidence-based practice, like scaffolding is in there, but we may not always see explicit instruction. So, but they can choose that. So we were really trying to find some areas that were overlapping in those strategies so that we could really show and do some comparative analyses of that as we get that data in. So just to kind of give a little background where that came from, but our team had direct impact on those HLPs that we were choosing to. They were fantastic. So we couldn't have done this really without them.
I know. And so here what they would do is choose the HLPs that they were going to be observing for in their coaching observation time. And we did put in parentheses the content area just to remind them. If you are doing co-teaching coaching, you have to choose HLP 1. And then let's see, here's another co-teaching one, HLP 6. So for every single one of them, there's a requirement of 3, but possibly this person doing coaching for co-teaching is also looking for this teacher to establish a consistent, organized, respectful learning environment. So they could add that one on too. So dependent upon which of the HLPs you choose will determine which of these questions, these follow-up observation questions you'll get. So this one, just says display this question if you've chosen HLP 1. And so then if you've chose that one above here, then this will appear to you. If you didn't choose HLP 1, you're not even going to see this box at all. So the instrument itself in design form looks a little more onerous than it actually is. So then here we used information from, Stephanie, was it from CEDAR that we took this from? Yeah, and so
just CEDAR and just the high leverage practices book, just kind of all of that research in there for skills that we would observe.
Yeah, so uses effective collaboration behaviors, i.e., and so we just copied this from the CEDAR descriptions, and then we're asking them, you either didn't observe it, it was minimally observed, that means that was kind of barely there or very inconsistent. It was observed or observed as a strength. And so we had defined observed as a strength, meaning that it was an automatic part of that teacher's classroom demeanor and an instructional, what they observed that day. So they check those boxes. So this is the quantitative component. And then what we wanted is that 2 follow-up qualitative questions. What did you observe that contributed to your decision that these indicators were observed or observed as a strength? So here we wanted the positive things that they observed that led them to that evaluation decision. And then the other one, what did you observe that contributed to your decision that these indicators were not observed or minimally observed? So if they chose either of those 2, they would have to indicate, okay, this, it was there once, but then it was inconsistently used, or I didn't notice this at all. The teacher could be doing this. And then we move on through all of the HLPs that we have above. Again, the only ones that are seen by the coach are those that they've chosen above. But it does go on and on. But in this way, what we can do, we're going to be piloting this. We are going to be piloting this starting now in September, and we'll be piloting it through February. And then we have quarterly in-person meetings of our entire team. So in March, what we'll be doing is taking a look at the data that we've gathered throughout this term. I think last year we were coaching about 70 individuals. We have put our team on notice. I know Stephanie has, and I know I have, letting them know that coaching will now increase as a part of the work that the IESE network does, that we've done our first couple of years of implementation. We've built our professional development. We have increased our influence throughout the state to the extent that there will be districts, we were just notified in a webinar yesterday that there will be districts who have a different needs level that will be told that they must work with the IESE network. And so that's been just an excellent communication and affirmation of the work that the IESE network does. But it also now will increase just the work that we do throughout the entire state, and coaching will be a significant part of what we do in this coming year.
Yeah. So Laura and Stephanie, thank you so much, because we receive feedback that lots of people wanted to know about what you were doing with the information. Now they know. Others also have been requests about, we want to understand more about a state's fidelity system. And I think this kind of uncovered some things. The logic you're using in the online assessment is great and really helpful for folks as well. So kudos. We can't wait to hear about the data. And congratulations on being an initiative, a program that folks see value in and want to scale up as well.
Good. And just to answer, Veronica had asked about how long we've been working on this, how long we've been thinking about it, or the actual working on it started immediately after or maybe during the SPIDI conference in July. And then I find it just so interesting how when we first started meeting with our team, the other three that we brought on board with us, and we just told them, like right from the outset, we're going to start implementing this after Labor Day. And that was just kind of stated as a fact, nothing surprising, nothing, it is kind of internally, it's a little fast. And we just met several times a week, and then I would make revisions and we'd meet again. And,
but it came together in 3 weeks, ultimately. It was like a 3-week time period. And yes, our team did have direct of what the rubrics say, like the descriptors of did not meet, minimally observed. Yes, we worked through that as a team. Of what exactly those say. So that is kind of within the observation instrument that they use during the observation of the teachers. So yep, that is all in there.
And Karen, I love your comment, get started and get better. Exactly. And I know your work has been used extensively by us, and we have been so helped by you and the RCA, the SCA, because it's done exactly that. It's helped us get started and get better. So.
Yeah, and maybe we could have you all back to Kristen Perez-Rickle's question. Maybe we could have you back to show your results and how that's feeding into your coaching. Would you be interested in sharing that?
Sure.
Great.
Okay, great. Good. Thanks for the question. Well, thank you both so much. We really appreciate the opportunity to look under the hood, right? And see what you created and understand the process. Appreciate you. Right, and we have a speaker today who is joining us. This actually does still relate to sustainability, but in a little bit different way. It came up in Fidelity conversations. We've had some really good thinking from a group of people who are interested in talking about fidelity and saying, if you don't have that capacity for implementation supports, you're not going to get to fidelity, right? And that capacity is the infrastructure you create all through your state system. And Karen Ward has dedicated herself and supporting her team and making that happen in states. And she is truly scaled up in terms of implementation science being spoken about. I'm sure you heard it at the OSEP conference. Everywhere you go, it didn't used to be like that, believe it or not. So I want to introduce Karen Ward, co-project director of CSEP and many other things. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you all. It's great to see you all. I recognize many, many faces and names, and I hope your school year has started off on a fabulous start as you get going here. So let me get my slides up, make sure you guys can see those. Let me get them in slideshow mode here.
Yeah, and while she's doing that, CSEP will not be with us at the SPIDIG National Meeting this year due to they only have so much money, and travel costs is something significant. And so she can join us again, but at least to get this conversation going about how some of the practices you can use as that systems change coach in your state. So thank you, Karen.
Yeah, I will miss you all. I think it's going to be the first conference in like 10 years that we won't be at with you all. So, but we appreciate Jennifer as she gets more and more strategic in how our time is allocated and how our funds are being used. So thank you, Jennifer, for that. But we'll miss you all. We'll be with you in spirit. Okay, so I, of course, planned way too much. Those of you that know me know that I did that. So I'm going to adapt and be flexible today and really focus in on the implementation competencies for practice and highlight those if you've not seen those. Share a little bit of a case example that will have some data within it and how those work. And I also was going to share, NERN has developed an implementation plan template that we've been using with 19 districts across the country in another project, and what we're learning, because everyone wants that implementation plan template, and what we're learning and how we're getting, and we're in the process of co-designing another one, but we're probably not going to have time for that today. We'll have to just tease you with it and maybe save it for another time if that's something you're interested in. All right, so implementation practice. So when you hear that phrase, implementation science, people often hear science and they automatically think about research, but really the field of implementation science is both implementation research and implementation practice. Research, we're seeking to understand what are those implementations, methods, approaches, strategies, tools that work best to put those effective or evidence-based practices and programs into our classrooms, into the real work. And so they're studying and identifying what are those effective implementation approaches. Implementation practice is what we do every day in our work together, where we're really seeking to take what those implementation strategies and approaches are that work and adapt and apply them within the different local contexts that we're working within to achieve those student outcomes for our students with disabilities and their families as we move forward. So who engages in the work of implementation practice? There's lots of folks, and they all have different titles, right? Technical assistance providers, improvement advisors, facilitators, consultants, implementation specialists, mentors, coaches. They all have different titles, but they're all engaged in that function of providing implementation support. There was a recognition in the field, it's going on 5 years now, that we needed to get more specific as to what are those competencies and the skills that are needed to engage in this implementation support work. If you ever have done a research synthesis on the effectiveness of technical assistance, not only in K-12 ed, but in other fields, it's all over the place. And there's also a need, without having those competencies known, we can't develop standards or training programs to support those competency skill development and really have a workforce that is capable of supporting and integrating implementation research into implementation practice to improve outcomes. So several years ago, NERN underwent a process of identifying what those competencies are. But before I do that, I'm just curious, and because of yeah, correct, Jennifer. There are many, many different implementation science frameworks out there. So how do we make decisions around which of those frameworks or which strategies, and how do we apply and adapt those? So because of time, we're not going to do breakout groups. But I'm just curious if folks could just take a moment and drop in the chat, maybe as like a waterfall, as well as feel free to come off mute if you'd like. What skills do you think are that you need to have to support change within your SEA and state? Because really implementation is about changing the adult actions, right? So what skill, and creating that systemic change. So what skills have you found or that you think are really important that you need to have?
And I'll start people's thinking by giving an idea.
Yeah,
I think you need to be able to use language that connects for people. Terminology catches people up. I know when we're trying to work between general and special education, the phraseology could be different.
Awesome. So, Corinne put a great one: giving and receiving feedback. Stacy got flexibility, efficiently gathering information, listening, commitment, communication to an open mind, communication, data analysis. These are great. Tracy, I love it. Patience with others. That's a skill I need to continually work on and develop. Collaborative problem solving, the emotional intelligence, cultural competence. These are great. Negotiating. Can you think of within your own graduate training or undergraduate training where we got a specific training on some of these? Do you know what I mean? As we go through to really developing them. a team that's got variety of strengths. You can't do enough people work in this work. You're exactly right, Stacy, as we go forward. So you guys are hitting on many of the competencies and the skills, networking, absolutely. And so NERN wanted to be systematic in our work on identifying these competencies and take a research-based process to it. And we did this in collaboration with the Center for Effective Services over in Ireland and the European Implementation Collaborative Group. And what we did basically was we did an initial lit review. We did a document review, like the gray matter of what people have maybe in white papers or in like policy documents or training materials. We did some initial vetting with individuals who do the work, right? We went to and did focus groups and listening sessions with those. We also did an integrative systematic review, as well as a content validation survey with several international organizations who work as that intermediary organization to support implementation as we go forward. And based on that, on all of those different methods, we went through an iteration process and we arrived at that there are 6 guiding principles to our implementation support when we're engaged in it. And there's 3 domains of competencies with 4 to 6 core competencies and key activities per domain. So we call these the implementation support practitioner competencies. So if you take a moment, the principles are going around that inside bubble. So those such as being empathetic, I saw that in the chat here, being curious, being committed, saw that as well, using critical thinking, centering and advancing equity within our work, and embracing cross-disciplinary approaches were the guiding principles that we identified. Then you can see the 3 domains that we came up with were the co-creation and engagement, sustaining change, and ongoing improvement. So let's break these down a little bit more. And I love this quote before we jump in. Implementation support is not just a strategy or a technique, it is an art. So it's not black and white. You've got to use those critical thinking skills. We've got to keep people at the forefront and be human-centered. And context matters, as you all know, as we engage in this important work. All right, so we have our guiding principles, which are those foundational attitudes. And as we think about those guiding principles, and I'll leave the screen up, but my question for you all, and I'd love to hear some voices if folks would be willing to come off mute here, is do those principles resonate with you in driving your implementation work? Are there some that resonate more so with you? And are there other guiding principles that guide you in your work? And I'm going to put them back on the screen here for you, Vicki. So do these resonate? Are there ones that you think that we missed from your perspective as you take a look at those guiding principles? And I apologize, I'll slow down a little bit. I was worried about time. What are folks' reactions? Good one, Vicki, being collaborative, right? Because you're right, implementation is not done to folks, but it's done with them. And I think we try to really bring that to light in that domain of co-creation and engagement within the competencies within those. Absolutely.
I love the being curious. And I feel like that encompasses a lot of what people had put in the chat about listening and being flexible and hearing out others in the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and gathering information, right? And the other one I always think about around that one is not making assumptions. You're coming in and people have a blank slate, like that they don't know, or they're not already doing pieces of it. I find sometimes folks will enter that and think I have to teach you everything all over again, versus really taking the time to sort out what do they know, what are the assets that we can build upon related to that. So that's excellent, Kristen. Thank you.
Can I Can I add to Kristen's? This
Yeah,
is Stacy.
please.
I like the be curious part, and I think it goes really well with being empathetic, right? Understanding the realities of the communities that we're working with, and understanding those realities, and actually then promoting those cross-disciplinary approaches, right? It's sort of like all hands on deck. We're taking a village approach, and all lived experiences and ideas are valued in the space. I found that has always been very helpful with entering a space and sustaining partnerships within those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. I love those connections, Stacy. Let's see. RJ in Washington says, embracing cross-disciplinary approaches. We seem society and education continuously looking for the one answer, right? In reality, it's often a lot of different answers and different when considering context. Yeah, Scott, you're going to see I have a slide at the end. Be curious, not judgmental by Ted Lasso. I'm a big Ted Lasso fan. So that's awesome. All right, Vicky. Yep, I love that quote by Stainer as well. Holly, oh, cross-disciplinary approaches has really gotten some good discussion here going. Oh, the same words but mean different things. For example, working with people in mental health and their tiers are different than our MTSS tiers. Yeah, I mean, we're like the Tower of Babel, right? Where, as Jennifer was talking about, within education, within implementation science, within our fields, we like to rename things. And that's why I always go back to saying, okay, let's not get stuck on form. Let's focus on the function, right? So if we're meaning the same thing, but it does cause confusion out there. Absolutely. All right. Awesome. Okay. So now we've looked at the principles. Let's take a look at those competencies. I'm sorry, there's a big cart going by, making lots of noise here. So when we think about the competencies within co-creation engagement, sustaining change, and ongoing improvement, and I'm see if I have them on, here we go. Go back to the slide here for a moment. So within co-creation engagement, this is really the domain of collaboration and working with folks in terms of it being implementation, being that collaborative act. So these are the competencies about being able to engage in co-learning with folks and to facilitate co-learning happening. Brokering, being that bridge and communicator and the warm demander and connecting individuals within implementation. Finding those voices that have not been heard and bringing them to the table and asking why those voices are not at the table. Key piece to co-creation engagement as well is addressing those power differentials. They're inherently going to be there by the nature of positional, like the formal power differences that exist, say by titles, to the informal power differences that are going to be there. So how are we addressing those from the get-go so that we are enabling the right people to be at the table to support implementation and hearing those voices and engaging them in this work? Co-design. I believe I know on this call I have big fans of liberatory design, human-centered design, liberating structures, and design, and how you guys do this every day in your work when you're designing those implementation supports, the coaching systems, the professional learning, the data systems that are happening. And that takes a skill set to be able to do that careful co-design work. And then that tailoring the support, right? So how are we assessing where the strengths are, where the assets are, and really not making assumptions on the level of support, the dosage, and how are we tailoring that level of support as we go forward. So that's one domain. And you're going to see as we go through these that there's a lot of overlap. They're very much connected. I can't do co-learning without facilitation and not assessing needs and assets as well. So they're very much interconnected. So we'll move to the next domain of ongoing improvement. And in this one, we're looking at assessing needs and assets. How do we understand context, right? Applying and integrating implementation strategies and frameworks, to Jennifer's point of how many are out there. Facilitation, communication skills, and my personally favorite, conducting improvement cycles. So getting started, getting better, using that data. So we can't do implementation without skills in those areas. And then that final domain related to your sustainability topic is really key to sustaining change. And this is where we see grow and sustaining relationships, developing the teams, the capacity building, and cultivating the leaders, as well as the champions for the work as we go forward. So 4 to 6 competencies per each of the 3 domains. And hopefully you're seeing the interconnected as we develop content and learning resources around these competencies. We're constantly referring to others because of that interconnectedness between them. All right, so we wanted to give you time, and Jennifer, I think we have time for this, to do some self-reflection. I would love for you to choose a competency and review the activities of that competency that are within this document. And I'm going to come out of slideshow mode for a minute so I can put the link to this document in the chat for you. Here we go. All right, now I'm going to open it up here. So this is our document that when I open it up, that you'll see here, that outlines what are the key activities when I'm engaging in those different competencies and supporting implementation. So for example, for brokering here, I'm positioning myself as that bridge. I'm connecting otherwise disconnected individuals. I'm promoting other network weaving. I'm providing opportunities to engage with others as examples. And so there's core activities listed for each of those competencies. What I would love for you to do would be to take a few minutes, just pick one. We don't have time to look at all of them, and just kind of review those activities and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, I'm a newbie in this area, or 10, oh, Karen, I can teach this and coach others in those skills and probably do this overview better than you're doing this afternoon. So take a few moments. Feel free to turn off your camera. It's 4:18. So how about if we come back at 4:25 minutes, like 4:23? Does that work for everybody? Yep. And we'll do a brief discussion. Sound good? I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and let me know if there's any questions. Would anybody feel comfortable for another minute or two just sharing kind of their reflection as they looked at it? You don't have to give us your number rating, but just any like thoughts, reactions, maybe share the competency you looked at. I want it to feel safe.
I have a thought. Not a number. I think it's hard to put a number on this because I feel like I'm always growing as a human, right? And this work, and a lot of our work is human work. And I think I learned that through my journey in the SPDIG work, and I love implementation science for that. So when I see this, it makes me think of like a blueprint of what good leaders do to lead, how we really lead our people in this work with that frame of implementation, sustainability, and fidelity, so that we can really make the most impact for students. That's my thought.
Oh, thanks for sharing. I love that thought. I agree with you. I've been at NERD now over 10 years, which makes me feel really old. But I grow every day. Do you know what I mean? Like, I learn something new because our partners, the team, they're constantly pushing me. Do you know? So I totally agree with you. Anyone else?
I have a thought.
Yes, Veronica.
Hi. So I didn't get too far. I started at the co-creation and engagement piece, and I got to co-learning and brokering, and one thing that I'm seeing is the importance of relationships within all of this work, and especially in the brokering piece. I serve a community that is the size of Connecticut and really isolated from in Colorado and isolated from the Front Range. And so being that bridge between the state and the school district and the classroom, I find that to be really powerful. And I would find it to be very difficult if I didn't already have the relationships that I have in my area to foster or to be that bridge in between and to build that trust. So I'm really appreciating reading this and excited to dig into it more. So thanks.
Great. Well, anybody else want to share?
A thought or a question?
Yeah, go for it.
It's mostly a question. So initially, as you were kind of sharing this, I was thinking of implementation and change within your setting and organization as well. But a lot of this primarily looks at, the implementation support practitioner coming into a new system potentially and building those relationships. I was looking at the sustaining change one. And so I'm just curious about your thoughts on what this looks like if the implementation support practitioner is working within their own system.
Yeah, it's meant to be for both internal and external, right? Because as a change agent, you don't always have to be the external. You can also be the internal. You might be the champion or the coordinator within your respective district, within your respective agency. We think these are the competencies that are still very much needed. I especially think about so CISUP did a lot of vetting of these competencies with our point people within SEAs that we work with. We often call them like a state implementation specialist or a state transformation specialist. They could be they may have another formal title, but we're asking them to play that role. Do you know what I mean? And they gave us a lot of feedback on these competencies and how they use them every day within their work. Within a state agency, there's a lot of relationship building. There's a lot of brokering across departments, across teams within a state agency. Do you know, so we very much see those competencies still being very relevant, even when you're the implementation support person in your own internal organization. Do you know?
Yes. And I would really agree with that. I just, my thought, and I don't know, and I don't have time for this right now. I'm so sorry. But in
no, that's okay.
Change, two of those core competencies were really around relationships and kind of personnel specific. And so I'm just, I don't know, curious, wondering about what it looks like in sustaining change if the personnel that you've developed those relationships with and the leaders that you've cultivated leave the system. Do we just rely more heavily on that building capacity and that team development processes? Okay.
Yep. That's why building capacity and the teams are there, because teams are a buffer to that turnover. Do you know what I mean? Like when I think about, I know some of you have gone through multiple state superintendent or commissioner changes in your time within an agency, right? No, if I always feel bad saying this in front of them, but I say like, you come and go, and the people at the middle of the SEA are those that often are the most often that stay. Do you know what I mean? Like, so as much as it's important to cultivate them and bring them along and have their buy-in and whatnot, we've really been focusing on that capacity development in the middle of the SEA, because they're the buffer to when you have that constant revolving door. I see some head nodding, so I think folks are really, that's resonating with folks as we think about how much change that we see often. So
and
I know
Karen, we also talk about evaluators for the SPDIG for SIG Network. The evaluators are sometimes the ones who stick around the longest from certain projects. And so they have that knowledge and support, so they also bring in.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I know we're at time,
Yes.
Jennifer. I just want to tease, just real quickly, just point out, if you want to geek out with me and you like to geek out, you may have seen that we launched, oh no, I gotta go back to, there it is. I got too many tabs open. We launched a new version of the AI Hub. I know some of you that's freaking you out because you now have a different way of what it looks like. We're still finding links that are broken. We apologize for that. It just was a massive undertaking as we launched this new version. But one thing I wanted to point out is, under implementation practice is where you'll find those implementation strategies, frameworks, so on. Under the competencies is where you will find learning resources on those competencies. So for example, if I go to co-creation and I go to apply, for example, I will see resources around brokering and the new brokering interactive lesson, brokering on engaging the right partner, like resources to participatory asset mapping, relationship mapping, guidance for how we engage different perspectives. We have been heavy developing a ton of new resources and learning content around the competencies. The next module that's being released this month is addressing power differentials. And it's and then we have co-design coming next, tailoring support net. Like, so those are the 3 that are being released between now and December. So I just wanted to share this, if you had not seen it, that we have redesigned the hub. So we talk about what's the competencies to support those practices. And then we've also launched a micro-credentialing program. We'll launch the new cohort this starting next month, and we'll have another application opening in December for cohort 3 in the spring. So I just wanted to put that teaser out there, Jennifer, since I had them. I hope that was okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We like applied
apologize.
resources. Thank you, Karen, as always. And thanks everyone. It was great to see people today. And hopefully I'll see everyone soon at the national meeting. And lots of appreciation coming in the chat. Thanks, Karen.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, and I dropped the link to the slides since I didn't get through all of them if you wanted to see that
And
case study.
I dropped the link to the podcast. So
Awesome.
yep.
Thanks,
Everyone's
everyone.
happy. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.